Right, listen, you lock down the economy, okay? Ordinary family, my parents, how much their expenses decrease.
But are you arguing that the billionaires locked down the economy? I mean,
No, not all. I'm just trying to explain what happened, all right? You lock down the economy, okay? My parents, how much is their expenditure for? Basically nothing. Basically nothing, because their expenditure is entirely rent, mortgage, food, bills. Like, that's poor people's expenditure.
Right.
Whose expenditure falls during COVID?
The people who have, normally would go out and spend a lot of money.
People who have a lot of luxury
spending.
were spending, non-essential
they were
spending,
accumulating more money.
So if you ban luxury spending and you replace it with, as you say, government printed money, what's going to happen? That printed money is going to go to people who work in the service sector. They're going to use it to pay their bills. It's going to go to the rich people who own the corporations, who own the houses, who own the debt, and they can't spend it. What you have is basically a massive cash injection from the government through the poor to the rich. Listen, we saw the biggest and fastest ever transfer of wealth and increase in inequality in the history of our nations, and it was immediately followed by an inflationary crisis and a collapsing cost of living. This is the clearest proof you will ever need. You don't need me, somebody who's made millions of pounds betting on this. The clearest proof you will ever need of the absolutely bloody obvious fact that if you massively increase inequality, you will decrease living standards for working people. Well, I will agree 100%. It is difficult to tax rich people.
Yeah.
It is very, very, very difficult to tax rich people.
The difference...
I don't come here saying I want to tax rich people because it's easy. I know it's hard. I know probably I'm going to lose. I know our viewers' kids will live in desperate poverty. I know that. I do this because it is hard. If we are a country which says to ourselves, we don't try and do things which are necessary to keep our kids out of poverty because they are hard, then our kids will live in poverty. I don't need to be here. I'm a multimillionaire, just like you. I could be in the Philippines drinking pina coladas. I come in here because I come from a poor background, and it's ordinary families like my family, like the kids I grew up with, whose kids are going to be in poverty. It's difficult, but it is necessary. Sometimes we have to do things not because they're easy, but because they are hard. That is what makes a rich country rich, and that is what protects ordinary people. Listen, our grandparents lived in poverty. Did they say, let's not change it because it's hard? No, they didn't. They fought and they demanded healthcare, education, housing, food, and they got it. They got it.
So
that's why my parents could live a good quality life. They got those things. They got those things, and they were aware that in order to do that, you could not allow the super rich who have been living lives of luxury for hundreds and hundreds of years to eat everything while ordinary families could. It's really, really, really fucking hard. And I was the best student at one of the best universities in the best country, and I worked my tits off and I got the best job and I became the best trader. And what I made my money on was understanding that the British working class, the American working class, ordinary, hard-working people like my dad, like my mum, like the kids I grew up with, their kids and their grandkids would live in desperate poverty.
But what was the moment for you of self-realisation that you wanted to get out of it?
Well, you know, it's a good question because it didn't really come in a moment. You know, I mean, you spoke in the book about me sort of having a breakdown. You know, I didn't grow up. I'm not from a political. I don't consider myself a politician. Like for me,
no, I get it.
What I see, you know, I made that money, and everybody around me was like, "Well done, here's $2 million. You know, do it again." Like, and I got sick. I got sick.
Well, what made you sick? Do you think? Was it the pace of work, or
it was understanding that my country's going to fall apart, Piers. It's going to happen, Piers. Listen, I've been right for 14 years on this. Okay, it's going to happen. And you've made your predictions, you know. And I fucking hope I'm wrong, but I haven't been wrong before. Allow them to not pay tax. And
on their global incomes, on their global
So isn't it a bit more like if we were 10 of us at dinner and there was one guy who came to dinner on the condition he wouldn't pay, then leaves? Because these guys weren't paying tax anyway. If the reason they left is because they weren't paying tax.
It's like saying, hey, I'll pay 60% of this table, and they say at the table, hey, wait a second, we also want you to pay for everything that's happening at other restaurants as well.
Isn't it a bit more like these guys
and we're stretching
were here
the analogy
on a condition? You yourself said
no, you're 100%
the reason why they left is because we let them live here on the condition that they didn't have to pay taxes.
On their global, taxes matter, right? So why is everyone going to Dubai? Dubai, they're going there because there's no tax.
These guys, they live in Dubai, their money comes from the West. They are making money from the West while your average Western ordinary person watching this show now cannot afford to buy a house, cannot afford to have a family. We can tax those revenues at the point of sale. Why do we allow these guys?
It's called a consumption tax.
No, it's not. It's a tax on profits. It's not a tax on consumption.
You just said at point of sale, which means it's a consumption
tax. Based on the profits. You look at how much profit they have,
that's not
and
a
then you work
consumption
out where the profits go. Exactly, it's not a consumption tax, like I'm saying.
So No, so if you tax profits,
Yeah.
right, then those profits have to accumulate in that.
We had a lesson on interest rates. I went up to the professor afterwards and I said, why do you think we've been so bad at predicting interest rates for so long? At that point, we'd incorrectly predicted interest rate rises 11 years in a row. He said, no, we always knew rates would stay zero, which is like categorically, provably wrong. And I was shocked. And I said, no, like, we didn't. We kept saying they'd go up. And he was like, no, we knew. So I went back to my flat and I sent him the data. And he was like, oh, yeah, we did get it wrong 11 years in a row. These guys are so bad, they are unable to know that they're bad. I want your viewers to ask themselves, do I feel the richest I've ever been? Because I'll tell you who's the richest they've ever been, me, and probably you, and probably you, and Donald Trump, and Elon Musk. And in my opinion, what I see, I'm from a poor background.
But I think you're a great example of somebody who's made something of himself, come from a poor working class background by your own admission, and you turned yourself into the best trader in the world. You're a great example. And yet what you seem to be wanting to do is almost retreat from
listen,
your...
I don't want to tax I don't want to tax working people more. Okay? I worked hard to drag my family out of poverty, right? And I paid 50, 60% a year tax. At the same time, Duke of Westminster inherits £10 billion, more than 3,000 times what I made, pays nothing. Do you think that's fair?
No.
Do you think that's fair?
No, but again,
so let's change it. Let's change it. Let's tax working people less, your viewers less, and let's tax the billionaires more.